What's up? Today we've got three compact wireless microphone systems. We've got the Hollyland Lark 150, we have the Rode Wireless Go 2, and the Mirfak WE10. We're going to take a deep look at all three of these and try and decide which one is the best system. Now, it's a multi-layered issue, but let's get into it. Alright, so this is of course going to be a fairly complex video. I am going to put a detailed timeline down below. You can click that to skip ahead to any section you want. We'll have a look at the physical design, we'll talk about their usability, we'll give distance tests, sound tests, things like that. So let's just jump right into the first section, which is the size and the weight. Now maybe you can see here just by looking at them, but the Mirfak, generally speaking, is pretty significantly the largest in the kit, especially when you put the windscreen on there. It's also technically the heaviest when you're talking about overall weight. This is 36 grams for both the transmitter and the receiver. The Rode is about 32 grams for each of the transmitter and the receiver. But then you've got the Lark, which the receiver is of course larger and heavier than the rest of anything. This is 55 grams, but then their transmitter is the lightest of the group. It's 22 grams. So they've got both the heaviest and the lightest, just based on the way that they designed it. But that's what we're dealing with. And you can see the size here. The biggest thing in terms of size that I've felt a real significant difference with is this windscreen on the Mirfak. It is large, especially compared to the other two systems. So if you're using this outside, that's going to stand out quite a lot. Now in terms of effectiveness, those windscreens do seem to be pretty similarly effective, and I'll show you really quickly here just a quick clip of each of these with and without the windscreens in front of a fan so you can see how effective they are. But how they work is pretty different. Now the Rode, in all honesty, I feel like this shouldn't work as well as it does. It has this little tiny little twist lock underneath that goes into this little tiny space around the microphone on the top of the transmitter, and you have to line it up and twist it into place. It doesn't feel like it should be as easy as it is, but it is. It works really well. You just find it and twist it, and it's really quite simple and easy to use. This might be a little tricky to see, but the Hollyland has a kind of dummy 3.5mm pin that will go into the microphone jack, which is right next to the microphone that's built into the transmitter. So then this also has like a little plastic edge to it that will hold it so that way it doesn't spin out of place. So you just push it in there and it's not going to twist out of place because of the shape of that little plastic bit on there. Again, very, very simple, very effective, quick and easy to use. Now the Mirfak has a very simple design that just slips over the top of the actual transmitter, but I mean it's huge and it feels unnecessarily huge, and it's also the least elegant to get on there. I mean you have to kind of stretch it over the whole body, and it's not like it's hard, but it's a little bit more awkward than it is to just use those really quick snap-in designs that the other two systems have. When it comes to cables, I feel like it's a pretty small little detail to talk about, but these are, I feel, significantly enough different to spend a second or two on them. The Hollyland cable is a small coiled cable, and I feel like this is just the perfect size. When you're putting this on top of your camera, you don't need this huge cable that's going super long distances. This size is absolutely perfect. Even when I've had it on a top handle on top of my camera, it's long enough, it can stretch out easily enough, and it just doesn't feel like an excess of cable while still being long enough to work in, I think, a good enough variety of different setups. Mirfak does also have a coiled cable, but you can see it's a lot bigger, it's a bit heavier, and I feel like it's just a little bit overkill for the way that this is meant to be used on top of your camera. I feel like you have a lot of extra cable hanging off there. It's a small thing to complain about, but if we're comparing it side by side with the tiny little guy that you get here with the Lark 150, I think you can see that there is a significant difference. Now the Rode cable is significantly different. Obviously in color it's bright pink or red, maybe my eyes see it as pink, and it is fairly stiff because it actually is able to be bent into these different shapes. So once you plug it in, you can just bend it however you need to kind of fit the contours or the shape of your rig, which is kind of nice. but it is a little bit more awkward to deal with because of that compared to, again, the stretchy, loose, kind of coiled cables. But it is very nice quality. It is interesting that you can kind of bend it and fit your rig however you need. Generally a good cable. I just wish it wasn't bright pink. All right, now buttons and controls, and this is definitely going to play into that usability factor, which I said in my Lark 150 semi-review. I think that usability is a very strong point for this system. You take it out, it's connected, you put it away, it's charging. It's really simple. And as you can see, for example, on the receiver here, you've got these big dials and they've got protection on the side there so you don't bump them out of the way. When you turn them, they've got nice clicks to them, which you probably can't see. That's overexposed, I think. But it's got, can you hear that? Nice physical clicks to it. You can push them to jump through some other different setting. It's not like this is incredibly full-featured where you're diving through deep, complex menus and these two buttons are not enough. I think the balance of having two very simple buttons with the very simple menu, I guess you could call it, that is in this kit is a very good balance. This is very easy to use. The size is very easy to use. It's just a very pleasant system to work with. And then on the transmitter, you just have a single button here, which you can use for a power button if you need to, or as a mute button. Overall, with the Hollyland, I felt that this was very easy to just take out and start using with very minimal time spent on reading through the manual. There are some hidden features with long pushes of the buttons, for example, but it's not really a whole lot that is difficult to understand. Now the Mirfak is kind of the opposite. You've got tons of buttons and controls on these units, and they're fairly straightforward. Really only the pairing function is hidden as a triple button click, something that's not immediately intuitive, but you can see here you've got control for your gain marked as dB. You've got the mute button marked with a very standard little icon there. You've got some filters on the transmitter here. You've got the recording function that's controllable with a physical button. Around the other side, you've got power buttons. You've got your jacks for your line out, for headphones, for your microphone if you're using an external microphone. You have little status lights here for charging, for your line and recording functions. Just very, very physically full featured. The Rode, on the other hand, I feel can be a little bit confusing, and honestly, I do think it's just because of being a little bit dumb about it and kind of overthinking things. But everything is symbols and icons. I mean, even if you take a look at the instruction manual, you can see here there's like almost no actual text on here, and you kind of have to decipher even the instruction manual to figure out how to use this thing. Now, it's not that difficult, but I feel like of these three, the Rode does make it the least intuitive to use. Physically, you've got your power buttons, and then on the receiver, you've got a couple more buttons. Again, I'm being picky here, but that's what this video is about, and I do feel that in terms of physical controls and intuitiveness, the Mirfak wins out. As we talk about displays, I'm sorry if you can't see some of the details here and there. If I edit the video and something is difficult to see, I will put another picture or a B-roll clip over my talking to show it more clearly what I'm talking about. These do, I think, all have pretty clear and nice displays. The Rode and the Mirfak have a little bit more in terms of the amount of information that's displayed on screen compared to the Lark. But as I'm talking here, maybe you can see that I do think that the accuracy and responsiveness of the levels meters in terms of the mic, my voice here coming into these three kits, I think that the Rode Wireless Go does have the smoothest, most responsive and accurate looking levels meters of these three kits. On that note, the Lark and the Rode both have colored meters where you can see the yellow and the red for a clipping. With the Mirfak, you just have a monotone display. Now the WE10 does have I believe it's called the Pro version with two transmitters. I don't have that here, but it's going to be largely the same. But the Hollyland Lark 150 that I have here, and also the Rode Wireless Go, which I have the other transmitter here, these are both dual transmitter systems. The Lark does have a color-coded screen that the color of each of the settings will match the color of the LED on the transmitter, so it's easier to determine which is transmitter 1 and which is transmitter 2. The downside of that, though, is can you see the difference in colors of this like light blue and dark blue at first glance? I don't know how much it's going to really show up on camera, but looking at these with my eyes, even right in front of my face, side by side, I can barely see the difference in color between the little LEDs on the transmitters. So it's like a great idea to be able to quickly and easily distinguish which is which, but I can't visually tell. Anyway, in terms of displays, just a couple more small details I'll show you here. Now I know this is going to be overexposed, so I'll show this with some B-roll, but with the Lark you have the display on screen showing you your levels for your input, your mics, you have the battery level, the little signal strength icon, but then when you make adjustments to the gain knobs here, you can only see that. You can't actually see how it's affecting your levels until after it returns back to the main screen. So you kind of have to jump back and forth. It does jump back automatically, so it's relatively intuitive. Make some adjustment, wait a second or two, and then you can see the levels displayed again, and you can go on and further make adjustments. Now with the Mirfak, again, you have your battery level here. For this unit, it doesn't show you the battery level of your actual transmitter like the Lark does. But you have your signal strength here, you have your levels meter, which right now is really hot, and we'll talk about that in just a second, why it is hot. You've got your dB settings, your gain settings down there, as well as your filter settings. On the side here, you can see that I can make adjustments to my gain, and now that I've pulled it back to -18, it's much more acceptable. Now this setting is what I've been using for these tests, -18, but every time I turn this off and turn it back on again, it comes back on at +6. So I have to go in and change that again each time, which is kind of a pain. The gain settings on the other two kits stay the same when I turn the power off and turn it back on again. This is the only one that does not. But you can cycle through -18, you've got -6, 0, 3, and +6, and then it goes back around to -18. When you mute it, you can see a nice big mute icon, and then you can make adjustments for the low cut filter at 170 or 230 or 0, so there's nothing there, that's turned off. On the levels meter, you do have numbers here marking like your -12, your -6, and things like that, so it is, I think, pretty easy to get a nice levels setting. With the Rode, this is now the newest firmware that I could update it to. You can see here that you've got the levels in the middle there, and it's a pretty fine adjustment. You can switch this between fine and rough adjustments in the app if you want quicker adjustments. Then you can go ahead and use the button down here to select one of the channels, mute it, unmute it. You can then hold down the two buttons to switch between stereo and mono modes. Of course, the Hollyland Lark does also have these mono and stereo modes. With the Lark, you can choose a third mode, which is a safety track mode, and you can do that straight from the receiver. With the Rode, you have to select that in the software when you have this connected to your computer. Up top, you can use the power button to then cycle between modes, which will keep the screen on or dim it after a few seconds. Otherwise, you have battery life for the receiver and both the transmitters, as well as icons to let you know that the transmitters are recording or not. You have your signal strength, and you have your levels for each individual channel down below the battery levels, even if it's in mono mode and you only have one bar up top. Now when it comes to cases, this is an obvious win for the Lark here. As you can see, you get a hard shelled case here that you can just snap these into, boom, like that, 1, 2, and 3. And then when you snap them in here, it automatically starts charging them because this is also a charging case. It has 2 extra chargers built into the case. The battery life in the units themselves are a little bit lower, but the case does give it 2 extra booster charges, which is really nice. You've got a little extra space here to store the cable, for example. You can squeeze in the little windscreen. That's not actually the right one. Here it is. You can squeeze it in there. I'm not going to do it now because it's hard to do on camera. And then on the back here, you have a USB port, which means that you can charge all 3 of these with one cable. Technically 4 if you count the case. So you're charging the case, you're charging the transmitters, and the receiver all with a single cable. That's mind-blowingly, simplifyingly amazing. Now with the Rode, you get this little neoprene case, which is Velcroed closed, and it has space in here for everything pretty much. You can squeeze in all 3 units, you can squeeze in all the cables and things like that, the windscreens, and they do all fit. It's got a little bit of padding to it, and it's nicely made. It's not just, you know, a little cloth sack, but it's also not the same as the quality of the case from the Hollyland kit. And then with Mirfak, you just get this little sack. That's really all there is to say about it. Now, like I already said, when it comes to charging, the Lark wins 100%. You get one cable for the case, transmitter, receiver, all with one cable. It's just so simple. I love it, and it is a huge benefit of having this case. Now with the Rode and the Mirfak, you've got multiple cables for multiple units. You need to plug in all of them into separate sockets when you get home. It's just Cable City. If they were going to have a charging port on each individual unit, I wish that they had gone with something like the Spiffy Gear Q6 bracelets. They had a cable that could plug into 3 bracelets, and then it had one cable to charge into the wall, plug into the wall. So you still had to plug in each light physically, but then it only took up one spot in the wall or in the adapter, the USB adapter. That would have been a great way to go with this design. Just change the cable, and then you would only have basically one cable, which is individually charging each of those 3 units. I think that would have been a fantastic route, and it would have really simplified things for these other 2 kits. But as of now, Hollyland all the way. Now, battery life, I'll put some specifics up on screen, but the Mirfak and the Rode have longer battery lives built into them than the Lark. The Lark, like I said though, does have 2 extra charges built into the case, and if you count that in, the total amount of usable time are fairly similar across these units. So if you're going to be using them for longer takes in one go, then the Rode or the Mirfak is probably going to be a little bit better suited for that. The Hollyland will limit you because you'll have to recharge it halfway through or 1/3 of the way through. But overall, if you're using it a little bit here, a little bit here, a little bit here, then you're getting a similar total battery life. Just how it works is going to be a little bit different. Now, in terms of functionality, there are some significant differences between these different kits. Again, I have the WE10, not the WE10 Pro, so this is the single transmitter kit, but there is a dual transmitter option available, and I'm sure that it's pretty much going to work the same in terms of being able to split your audio into left and right tracks for the first and second transmitter, so you can edit them more easily in post, change levels, you can turn one off and turn the other one on, whatever you want to do, or you can mix them down into the same track. So that works the same, but the Lark 150 does also have an additional mode where you can have those tracks mixed down if you have 2 transmitters, for example, and then that's in the left, and in the right you have a -6 decibel safety track. So if you accidentally clip your audio, you can switch over to that and possibly save it, depending on how much you clipped your audio, of course. Now, both the Rode and the Mirfak have pretty standout features in that they offer internal backup recording, which is fantastic for a wireless kit like this that is not necessarily always the strongest in terms of maintaining that connection, especially if you have your body between the transmitter and the receiver. The difference though is that the Rode has internal memory, and to get the audio off of the transmitter, you need to plug it into your computer with a USB cable and then use their software to save that. The Mirfak uses a micro SD card, a physical SD card that you can just plug into your card reader like you typically would the cards from your camera, for example. And I think that that's very useful. You can also switch it on and off physically from the transmitter on the Mirfak. With the Rode, you have to adjust the settings again in the software, but then usually it's just you power it on and it's recording automatically. Useful, you don't have to remember to do anything, but again, having to plug it into your computer to use that audio is an extra unusual step, I guess, for some people. Again, it's cable city if you have to plug in 2 different transmitters. It just works differently. But in either case, having backup recording in transmitter is incredibly useful because you do find that you can drop your signal here and there, but if you have the backup recording, your audio is right there. Clear, clean, no drops. It's great. It's a very useful feature. Speaking of that though, I did notice some weird little clicks or drops in the Mirfak in pretty much every test that I did, and you'll hear it in the tests in just a second. I'm not sure if that's just my unit or what, but again, it is good to have that backup audio in case you get any weird connection issues. The Mirfak does also have that 2-stage low cut filter, which is not something that's built into the other kits. The actual numbers in terms of gain adjustment on each of these kits is a little bit irrelevant because the actual levels that they come in at are a little bit different on the camera. We'll again see that in just a second. The Rode has 3 gain settings, 0, -12, and -24, I believe it was. The Mirfak has like 6, I think. Again, I showed you that a few seconds ago. And the Hollyland has smooth 1 decibel gain adjustment. I believe it was from -10 up to +10 decibels. So how they work in terms of gain adjustment are a little bit different. As a general blanket statement though, the Mirfak is by far the loudest of these kits, and that could be a problem if you have a camera that cannot pull your audio back quite so far. I know in the past I used the GH4, Panasonic GH4, and that had pretty hot inbuilt preamps, so if you're using something that's overpowering, it could be a problem, and that might be something that you run into with the Mirfak. I don't have the GH5 to actually test it with anymore, but I had the audio settings on my Sony a7C pretty low, and this was set all the way at the minimum possible gain setting, and that is what it is. But anyway, we talked about the audio test. Let's take a listen now to how these sound. And in those tests, I will talk a little bit more about the details of my settings. All right, so for all these tests, we are recording to the Sony A7C, and we will keep all of these kits at 0 decibels, no pulling the gain back or boosting it up, just so that way we have an even playing field. And right now with this Rode kit, we have the audio in the A7C set at 4, which is very low. So the highest output from the Rode kit is pretty strong, but of course you can pull it back. But for now, this is the audio here indoors with the Rode Wireless Go 2. So now we've got the Hollyland Lark 150, and I've raised the levels in my A7C to 12. If you're familiar with that camera, it's boosted up from 4 with the Rode to 12 with the Hollyland kit. Of course, the Hollyland kit can boost this higher from the receiver, whereas with the Rode kit, 0 is the highest. All right, so now we've got the Mirfak kit, and this actually at 0 decibels was too hot. It was clipping already, so you can pull back that audio from the kit itself. I have it pulled down minus 18 decibels right now, which is the lowest it can go. Even minus 6, which is the next lowest, was still clipping my audio. So in the camera, it's set at 5, I believe. So it's pretty close to the max output of the Rode kit at its lowest, which is insane. And that actually might be a bit of a problem for some people if you can't pull that audio back in camera quite as much, because minus 18 on this lowest that it can go is actually pretty hot. But anyway, at that setting, I'm sorry, I can't make it an even playing ground here because at 0 it just clipped. I'll show you for 2 seconds here how it sounded. Okay, so now we're recording with the Mirfak, and then this is how it sounds again with that pulled back, so that way I can lower the audio to a comparable level to the other two kits. All right, so we should be fair here. We found out the Mirfak actually was really quite a strong signal. So at its lowest setting, it was pretty comparable to the Rode at its highest setting. So now we're gonna go back, and this is the Lark 150 again, and now I've boosted it up on the receiver to its highest setting of plus 10 decibels. And the input on the camera is now set at 5. So it's similar to the other two systems. So now just as a quick balanced recap with the same settings on the camera, this is the Rode kit at its loudest setting. And right now with this Rode kit, and now this is the Hollyland Lark 150, again at its loudest setting to match the loudest output from the Rode kit. And then once more we have the Mirfak with minus 18, the lowest setting, to again match the other two kits. All right, so now we've got the Mirfak kit. All right, so we're outdoors now. Currently I have the Rode kit on. The settings on the camera and the mic system are the same. There's a wind, so we do have the furry wind screens on here. Not necessarily a controlled wind test because I can't control or predict the strength or direction of this wind, but you should see if it generally is a problem in natural settings. Also, of course, different environments, different surroundings, maybe different echoes, noisiness of your surroundings, things like that. This is relatively quiet here. It's not what we're going for necessarily. Lav mics will probably reject that distant noise fairly similarly, but I just wanted you to hear how my voice sounds outside in this type of environment. All right, so now we've got the Hollyland Lark 150. There's a stronger breeze. It's going to test this kit a little bit more than the Rode. But again, in this particular situation, outdoors, this is how the Lark 150 sounds back to back, as you just heard, with the Rode kit. Next up, let's switch over to the Mirfak. Not sure how you say it. All right, and we're now here with the Mirfak or Mirfak, however it's pronounced. And again, we've got a decent breeze. So actually we've got a fairly comparable breeze, I think, with all three of these kits. Again, we're gonna do controlled wind test settings of these furry wind covers in just a second to see how effective they are. But this is, again, the Mirfak in this outdoor setting next to my house. There's some cement around. There's a car driving by now. We didn't necessarily get that with the other kits, but again, not necessarily off-axis rejection testing lav mics. That's not what they're all about. But you can hear again my voice, and hopefully you can get an idea for what it sounds like now both indoors and outdoors next to the other two mic systems that we've tested.
Okay. 11.50. Talking. 155 meter. Can you hear me? Talking. 15.9. Can you hear me? So, going back? Okay, go back. Talk. 16.5. Can you hear me now? Okay. 203.8.
So finally, of course, there's the price, and I'm going to put the prices up on screen, but I honestly don't think that the price is going to be really the deciding factor here. Of course, it's a factor, but I think that the real issue we're dealing with here is that the Rode and the Mirfak have internal recording, backup recording, and that's a huge feature. The Hollyland has the benefit of this awesome case, which makes charging simpler, it makes transportation simpler. They're really, really easy to get out and up and running in seconds. The Mirfak is physically larger, especially when we go and throw on that windscreen, and the audio is what it is. It may sound different on your voice than it does on mine, so don't take this single review as an example of audio quality. Definitely listen to more if you can, but again, there's the issue with the very hot signal we're getting from the Mirfak. That may be a problem for some users. But basically, the Mirfak is great, but I feel like the Mark II version is going to be even better. Maybe they could make it a little bit smaller. The materials could be a little bit better. Some of the bugs, like the gain setting resetting every time I power on and off, maybe they could redesign the windscreen a little bit better. I think some little things like that could be refined. Now, the Rode Wireless Go 2 is obviously a Mark II product, so they've already had the opportunity to refine a lot of that, and it shows. This is a very, very good system. It sounds good. It's easy to use. It's got great functionality. That inbuilt recording is a lifesaver. It's just a good, solid system for a very, very good price. The Hollyland kit, this was their first attempt at a microphone system, and I think they did a great job. There are downsides to it. I wish this had internal recording, for example. That would really make this choice tough. But the usability factor is amazing here. I love using this kit. It's just a pleasure to use. For me, I will be using the Rode Wireless Go 2 as my main kit from this type of microphone setup, but the Hollyland Lark 150 is going to be a very, very satisfactory backup, and I hate calling it a backup because it's not like I'm making any huge sacrifices, but that's what it's going to be because the competition is fierce. So I hope that answers any questions you might have about any one of these kits and how they compare to each other. But if there's anything I missed, if there's anything you want to know, any further detail, please let me know down below and I will do my best to get back to you. Otherwise, if you like this video or found it helpful, please consider giving it a thumbs up, subscribing if you haven't already, and as always, thank you for watching.